It was 2:03 a.m. when the CEO's phone buzzed on his nightstand. He didn't know it yet, but that single notification would destroy his career, his reputation, and everything he'd built for the past 15 years. And the best part? The person who sent that email was me. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one of cold, calculated corporate revenge. The kind where karma doesn't just visit, it shows up with receipts. But before I get to that explosive email that changed everything, let me take you back to where it all began, when I was just another overworked, underappreciated employee in a shiny glass building downtown. I worked for a company called Vantage Systems, one of those tech firms that loved buzzwords like innovation and team culture, but really meant work 70 hours a week and smile about it. My boss, Gavin, was the kind of guy who could charm a snake. Tall, confident, with that fake mentor energy that fools people at first. But if you looked close enough, you'd see the cracks. He was ambitious to a fault, and every success his team had, he claimed as his own. If you made a mistake, that was all on you. If you did something brilliant, well, suddenly it was Gavin's idea from the beginning. Classic corporate parasite. I was a project manager, responsible for coordinating a major product rollout, something that could have made my career. I'd spent months working late nights, building strategies, cleaning up data, and pulling the whole thing together while Gavin just smiled in meetings and took credit. But things went too far when he crossed a line I couldn't ignore. It was a Monday morning when I found out he'd submitted a performance report, my report, to the board, with his name on it. My graphs, my projections, my conclusions, all copied, all signed off by him. And when I confronted him, you know what he said? He looked me dead in the eye and said, "You should be grateful I used your work. It means you're learning how to support leadership. Support leadership. That's corporate code for stay quiet while I steal your success." Months went by. Gavin was promoted to vice president of operations, because of course he was. The higher-ups saw his leadership results, which were really my blood, sweat, and stolen spreadsheets. But I wasn't rushing. I knew timing was everything. If I exposed him too early, he'd find a way to blame it on me. So I waited until the company's biggest product launch, a make-or-break event with investors watching, press coverage, and millions on the line. That's when I'd drop the bomb. During those months, I quietly became someone Gavin didn't even notice. Invisible. Background noise. That's the best position you can be in when planning revenge. Unseen, underestimated, and patient. I even helped him prep for presentations, smiled through meetings, and nodded at every smug thing he said. He thought he was untouchable. And honestly, everyone else did too. Gavin was the golden boy of the company. People admired him, trusted him. He could lie to your face and still get a standing ovation in the boardroom. But no one saw what I saw. Then came the night before launch. Everyone was exhausted but excited. Gavin was pacing the floor like a general before battle. He gave one of his fake pep talks, you know the type. "We're family here. We win together. Let's make history tomorrow." And I remember thinking, oh, we're about to make history all right. Just not the kind you'll like. That night, I stayed late under the excuse of running final checks. But what I was really doing was scheduling an email. An email with every piece of evidence I'd gathered over 8 months. Expense fraud, manipulated budgets, false reporting, all tied directly to Gavin's accounts. The email was set to go out at 2 a.m., right to the CEO, the board of directors, and, for good measure, the company's internal audit team. And then, just because karma loves an audience, I copied in 3 major tech journalists who covered corporate scandals. When I hit schedule, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, but by the time I got to the office the next morning, chaos had already set in. You could feel it the second the elevator doors opened. The hum of whispers, people huddled in corners. The nervous energy of a company realizing something big had gone down. And right there, in the middle of it all, was Gavin. Or rather, what was left of him. His usual swagger was gone. He looked like a ghost, pale, sweating, trying to act calm while 2 security officers stood beside him. He wasn't even allowed to go back to his desk. Someone had already packed his things into a single box. When I walked past, he saw me, and for a moment our eyes locked. He looked confused, maybe even scared. I just smiled politely, like any loyal employee would. He had no idea it was me. Not yet. By 9:15 a.m., the internal Slack channels were lighting up like fireworks. Words like fraud, embezzlement, and audit review were flying everywhere. The CEO had called an all-hands meeting for noon, something that never happened unless the company was in serious trouble. And trust me, we were. Now, if you've ever worked in a big corporation, you know how quickly rumors spread. Half the company was convinced we were getting shut down. The other half thought Gavin was being promoted again. But then came the email. At exactly 11:47 a.m., everyone in the company, and I mean everyone, got a mass email from the CEO himself. Effective immediately, Gavin M. has been terminated pending investigation. We have identified serious financial discrepancies and ethical violations within the operations department. A third-party audit is underway. Thank you for your patience during this process. That one message detonated like a bomb. I pretended to be shocked, of course, murmured things like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it," and "He seemed so professional." Meanwhile, inside, I was screaming with satisfaction. Because what no one knew was that the audit team wasn't just internal. I'd made sure to CC the right external contacts too. Within hours, word reached a few tech journalists who had a taste. But here's where it gets really interesting. The investigation moved fast. The evidence trail was undeniable. Fake vendor accounts, forged invoices, kickbacks from consultants that didn't exist. They even found emails where Gavin bragged to a friend about how no one ever checks the fine print. He'd stolen over $420,000 in less than 2 years. The board was furious. The CEO looked humiliated. And HR? They acted like they'd never even met him, even though they used to worship the ground he walked on. I sat quietly through every meeting, sipping coffee, pretending to be surprised at every new revelation. On the outside, I was calm. On the inside, I was on fire. Because this wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice. A week later, the audit team started interviewing employees, one by one, to see who might have noticed anything unusual. When it was my turn, I played it cool. They asked if I had ever suspected anything. I smiled and said, "Looking back, I guess some things didn't add up, but I trusted management." It was the perfect lie. Because remember, I'd sent the evidence anonymously. The email had come from a burner account, routed through a VPN, encrypted with no trace back to me. I'd covered every digital footprint like a pro. They had no idea it was me. But karma has a funny sense of humor. 3 days later, I got a message from someone outside the company, a journalist from Business Digest, one of the same people I'd copied on the email. She wanted to thank the anonymous insider for exposing corporate fraud, and said the story had helped spark an industry-wide review of vendor auditing systems. She said, "Whoever you are, you didn't just take down a bad boss. You made a difference." That message hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible anymore. But Gavin? He wasn't done yet. Apparently, he tried to fight back, claiming he'd been framed, that someone had hacked his files, that jealous employees were out to get him. Classic deflection. He even hired... But here's the part that still gives me chills. And it's something I've never told anyone before. About 2 weeks after the story broke, I got a plain white envelope at my desk. No name, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with a printed sentence. "You really thought I wouldn't find out." No signature, no logo, just that. My blood went cold. Was it Gavin? Someone from his old team? HR? I didn't know. I started watching my back, literally. I parked closer to the building, checked over my shoulder when leaving late, and changed my personal passwords. I even stopped using my usual coffee shop for a while. Because even though I'd won, I suddenly realized just how dangerous it is when you play with powerful people. Still, the truth was on my side. And as the weeks passed, things started to settle. The company restructured, hired a new VP, and quietly buried the story under PR control. Gavin's name became taboo, like Voldemort in a corporate suit. No one dared mention him again. And then one day, out of nowhere, I got called into the CEO's office. I thought maybe I was in trouble. Maybe they'd finally figured out it was me. But instead, the CEO smiled, handed me a sealed envelope and said, "We're promoting you. You've been a consistent performer through all this chaos, and we trust your leadership." Leadership. The very word Gavin had used to belittle me. That promotion came with a raise, my own office, and a quiet sense of poetic justice. But that wasn't the end, because a few months later, I'd discover something that would flip the story on its head. A secret connection between Gavin and someone I never expected. And let's just say, my revenge might not have been as clean as I thought. You'd think getting that promotion would have been the happily ever after moment, right? New title, bigger paycheck, a corner office with an actual window instead of a gray wall. But I couldn't relax. Not after that anonymous note. "You really thought I wouldn't find..." Rachel was powerful. Old school corporate royalty. The kind of executive who could make or break a career with a single email. If her name was on those documents, it meant Gavin hadn't been acting alone. For weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Did she help him? Did she cover for him? Or was he blackmailing her too? Either way, I suddenly realized my perfect revenge might have taken out the wrong person. Or worse, exposed something bigger than I could control. One Friday evening as I was packing up, Rachel appeared at my office door. She never visited my floor before. Ever. "Lena," she said smoothly, closing the door behind her. "You've had quite a year." Her tone wasn't warm or cold, just unreadable. She congratulated me on my promotion, asked about the new product line, small talk stuff. but the whole time her eyes studied me, like she was calculating something. Finally, she said, "You handled yourself very well during the investigation. Discretion is rare these days." I smiled politely. "Thank you. It was a learning experience." Then she leaned in, lowered her voice, and said, "Sometimes the right people have to fall to protect the company." My heart skipped. Was that a threat or a confession? Before I could respond, she stood up and added, "I hope we can continue to count on your loyalty." And just like that, she walked out. That night I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in my head. The right people have to fall. I went back through the files I'd saved, the same evidence that destroyed Gavin. Hidden among the spreadsheets, I noticed something I'd missed before. Some of the payments weren't just going to Gavin's fake vendors. They were redirected through a legitimate account first. A bridge company called Orion Consulting Group. And guess whose name was listed as a silent partner? Rachel Lynn. It all made sense. Gavin wasn't just embezzling money for himself. He was part of a bigger kickback scheme that involved people at the top. Rachel had used him as a frontman. When he got caught, the spotlight stayed on. For 3 nights straight, I couldn't decide what to do. If I refused, they might dig into my role in Gavin's exposure and find the anonymous email. If I accepted, I'd be joining the same circle of corruption I thought I'd destroyed. That's the thing about corporate revenge stories. You think you're the hero until the plot flips and you realize you're part of the sequel. So I came up with a plan, a new kind of revenge. I took the folder Rachel gave me home. Buried inside were performance reports, budget projections, and, most importantly, a list of strategic partners. Every name on that list tied back to Orion Consulting Group. I spent weeks quietly building a second dossier, double-checking every connection, every shell company. This time, I didn't use a burner email. I went bigger. I reached out to the same journalist who'd thanked the anonymous insider months earlier. I told her everything, off the record. She didn't push for my name, just asked for proof. I gave her more than proof. I gave her a story. 2 months later, the article dropped. Headline: Whistleblower reveals board-level fraud at Vantage Systems. Millions laundered through consulting shells. It was explosive. Rachel Lynn resigned within 24 hours. 2 other executives retired early. The CEO announced a full leadership restructuring. The company's stock tanked for a week, then started climbing again once they announced a new era of transparency. And me? I got another anonymous email. No threats this time. Just 3 words. You win again. A few days later, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. The woman on the line introduced herself as Clara Monroe, CEO of Nexus Tech Solutions, one of our biggest competitors. She said she'd read about the scandal and admired my resilience. Then she said something that stopped me cold. "You probably don't remember me, but I used to work under Gavin years ago. He stole one of my projects and cost me my career. I've been waiting a long time to see him fall." As I packed up my office for the last time, I slipped Gavin's old ID badge into my bag. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Because someday, someone will come for me too. And when they do, I'll be ready. They say revenge is best served cold. But after everything I'd been through, Gavin's betrayal, Rachel's corruption, the sleepless nights, and that final email that changed my life, I realized something deeper. Revenge is best served calculated. When I joined Nexus Tech Solutions, the competitor company run by Clara Monroe, I didn't just step into a new job. I stepped onto a new chessboard. Clara was sharp, charismatic, strategic, the kind of CEO who could see 10 moves ahead. And from day one, I could tell she saw something in me. But what she didn't know was that I saw something in her too. My first week, she invited me to a private dinner with her executive team. The restaurant was the kind of place where you don't see prices on the menu, which is corporate code for, "We're talking power tonight." She leaned across the table and said, "You've been through hell, Lena. Vantage burned you, but you turned ashes into ammunition. That's the kind of survivor I need." I smiled. I just don't like seeing bad people win. She raised her glass. "Then let's make sure they never do again." That's when I realized this wasn't just a new chapter. It was a full-blown sequel. Over the next few months, I rebuilt everything I'd lost: my confidence, my voice, my purpose. My new team respected me. My name carried weight. People listened when I spoke. And for the first time in years, I wasn't surviving the corporate world. I was running it. But remember what I said earlier? In business, power always comes with a cost. And mine came on a quiet Thursday morning. A message appeared in my inbox. No subject, just a short line in the body. "You taught me well." Attached was a news link, a headline from Tech Insider Weekly. The scandal tore through the industry. Vantage Systems stock plummeted, while Nexus Tech's reputation soared as the ethical alternative. Clara had played the same revenge game I did, only this time, I was part of her strategy. Later that night, I sat in my office, city lights reflecting off the glass. And for the first time, I didn't feel used or manipulated. I felt equal. Clara and I weren't enemies. We were reflections. Two survivors of the same system, both too smart to stay silent, both willing to bend the rules to fix what was broken. And maybe that's what real power is: knowing when to fight back and when to build something better. Months later, during an executive summit, Clara made an announcement that stunned everyone. Effective immediately, Lena Carter will be appointed as Chief Operating Officer of Nexus Tech Solutions. The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Me, the same woman who used to get talked over in meetings, was now second in command at one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I imagined Gavin seeing the headline from whatever jobless corner of the world he'd landed in. That thought, it felt really good. I walked onto that stage, shook Claire's hand, and smiled at the cameras. I wasn't just another story of workplace karma anymore. I was proof that revenge, when done right, isn't about destruction. It's about taking back control. And maybe that's why stories like these matter. Because somewhere out there, someone's working late, getting ignored, passed over, maybe even stolen from. And they need to know. Karma doesn't always wear a halo. Sometimes, it wears a power suit. So yeah, that's how I went from being just another name on a forgotten spreadsheet to the woman who brought down a corrupt company and rose to the top of another. Not bad for someone who was once told to support leadership, huh? Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this story of corporate revenge, workplace karma, and office drama, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications